This is the To Be Single or Not to Be podcast, and we're doing what? Running it back.
Hi guys, and welcome to the To Be Single or Not to Be podcast with the new Running It Back series, which I hope that you guys have enjoyed thus far. So today we are diving into an episode that we recorded way back when on April the 1st of 2019. And on this episode, it was titled, I Want a Husband. And we're going to talk about, like we did then, why everybody at the time wanted a husband. And I think that present day, a lot of people still do want a husband, but the views have changed somewhat. And a lot like the last episode, this is one where it just really blatantly stood out to me that while some views were the same, I think I had more views than not that had changed. So we are going to get right to it. The first thing that we talked about and people wanted a husband was, dudes are just similar life goals and views. People wanting to wait until marriage in order to have a child. People feeling like that was just the trajectory of life. Like you go to college, you get a career, you get a husband, you have a child, the American dream, quote unquote, the white picket fence with 3 kids and the dog. And that was like the first viewpoint of, I would say, millennial women. I think back then, like we're just following what society says we should be doing. But I will be the first to say that I feel millennials are the first of many. I will be the first to say that millennials are, I feel, one of the first generations that is going away from the norm and really breaking away from what society says we should be doing since I've been on this earth. I know there have been a lot of movements well before I came along, but since I've been an adult, I feel like our generation is really just breaking the mold on what society says we should be doing and going a different direction, not just to rebel against it, but because we are making different decisions that are better suited for our life over what our parents may think is better suited or what society may think is better suited for us. So the difference there was that I think some people still hold true to those views and nothing wrong with that. But the other part that was a huge thought was around marriage and kids. And so what I'll say changed with my perspective of that was back then I was of the notion like, I want to wait until I'm married to have a child. And I even had a friend that was of the thought process of like, you break, you buy. Meaning like if we have sex and happen to get pregnant, even though especially as you get older, there's no happen to get pregnant. But if we get pregnant, you got to marry me. And I do not feel that way anymore. And I'm going to tell y'all why. So marriage is a relationship. And with any relationship, there is no return, no guaranteed return on investment. So you can get married, you can have the child. That does not guarantee that that relationship is going to work out where you all are going to stay together forever. And I'm not just saying somebody's going to get up and just leave. People pass away. People go to jail. Things happen. People wake up and just decide they don't like the person anymore. So now we are just going our separate ways. But I used to feel like in my mind, for some reason, like marriage guaranteed something back then. And I now am very super, hyper, wildly aware that marriage don't guarantee shit. At the end of the day, you have two people who have made a decision to come together and have signed this contract and made this business agreement that we are going to be together and we're going to do life together. And I know that life be lifing. Life happens. And I know more than one woman that walked into a situation that looks exactly like I described, had a child, was on the yellow brick road to whatever I guess happily ever after looks like. And now that husband is gone for good reason in most instances. So I'll say that I now understand that I could see the almost like safety blanket of being in a marriage and having a child and almost like having a guaranteed 2 incomes, having a guaranteed second set of hands, having a guaranteed, person to help you with the rearing of this child. I get the concept, not against it. I do have a desire to be married. However, what I do know is that, and I think as I talk this through, my mindset is that I'm of the age in space and place in my life where I could have a child with someone that I'm not in a marriage with, but I'm in a serious committed relationship with. Now, there are some people that don't even need that portion, and that's fine. That's just not my MO. But I also think that how I'm operating and being my most authentic self and making sure that I'm looking for a person that's able to lead me places and it's going to, be the head of the household and it's going to be aligned with the vision and the mission I have for my life and the same values and integrity. I think that I would end up being with that person and being married anyway. So I could say, yeah, I'm okay with having a child. I'm okay with having a child out of wedlock, but I think that ultimately with how I operate, I will wind up in a marriage having a child anyway. But this goes against what I said, still all those years ago. I really felt like there's no way in hell I'm going to do it if I'm not in a marriage. And I just don't feel like I don't feel that way anymore. But I think also because I now know that, and I'd highly recommend that women don't do this, is, don't have sex with someone that you're not comfortable with them possibly being the father of your child. And I'm not trying to dictate women's bodies. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that if I'm having sex with someone, even if I use protection, there's a chance that I can have a child with this person, even if I'm not in a relationship with them. So I'm going to try to only engage in sexual activity with people that are of good character, that do have integrity, that do have morals and values, were not raised by wolves, and would be enough of an upstanding person to want to be a parent in this child's life in the capacity that would be desirable for us all. So that said, I just try to look at it that way. The long and short of it is, as we get older, I think we should stop. As we get older, I think we should try our best to stop putting ourselves in situations that are not going to be beneficial for the productivity and upward progress of our life. I think when you're younger, you kind of have those moments and you go through certain things where it's like, I shouldn't have done that, and you kind of live and you learn. But I think as you get closer to 40 and higher, I'm not saying no mistakes can be made, but don't y'all think some mistakes should stop being made at a certain age? Like, it's almost like if a person called me right now and it's like, so-and-so in jail, I'm gonna be like, the fuck for what? What was they doing? Like, at this point in life, we just really, I'm a rule follower, but at this point in life, like, what are you really out here doing that you gonna wind up in jail? Are you stealing? Are you fighting? Are you vandalizing property? Are you driving under the influence? It's a number of things in life that yeah, I'm okay with saying that. As we get older, you should get wiser. But we all know everybody grows up in age, but they don't grow up in maturity. That's a fact. But I think we should try to do a better job at making more mature and wiser decisions. So I'm not of the same notion that my guest was at the time of the whole, like, you break, you buy thing. No, I feel like if I was to make a decision where, I got broke, meaning that, I got laid down, sitting down, stand up. I ain't standing up. I'm down because I decided to have sex with a person that I'm not in a relationship with. Or if I'm in a relationship and we not married and we gonna have this child and we just gonna do it. I'm not gonna force you. That's the thing too. I'm not gonna try to coerce you or force you into anything. Not that for damn sure. Not a relationship or a marriage. I want no parts of that. But I think that also it's fine. I think those views of desiring marriage and desiring marriage before a child and desiring the house with the picket fence and the dog, I think those views are okay too. I just don't necessarily subscribe to them in that exact way. But it's like, as I talk it through and think about it, I think just how I'm a very, strategic person. I think as strategic as I am and as strategic as my life has been, that when, that time comes, it may end up landing that way just because of who I am. And I'm okay with that. But I don't agree with that whole, you gotta, the judgment of not being married before you have a kid. That's 1,000% out of my mind. And not that I feel like I was a huge judgy person back then, but I do think for a long time, more so in my 20s, when I got to my 30s, I kind of had an awakening. I used to feel like, just wait till you get married to have kids. And now it's like, no, if you want to have a baby, because like I said earlier, things can go left regardless. But I do understand in wanting the financial stability But even with that, it can still go another way. And I'm not going to go down the tangent. We know of people that are in relationships or married and feel like single parents. You know, that does happen. That goes without saying. So it's just like, all of this shit is a risk, you know. And you just hope to roll the dice and wind up in a situation that's more positive than negative. So the next thing we found out was that we talked about was about love. You know, why do people want a husband? And some people feel like, you know, I just love him. Y'all know my favorite show, Divorce Court. I see people all the time, couples on that show all the time, where people have done super egregious things, you know, unhinged behavior at the highest level that you can think of. And when the judge will ask them, like, why are you still wanting to be in this relationship? More than 50% of the time, the woman will say, because I love him. And I'm like, love is never enough. Love is never enough to be in a toxic situation. Love is never enough just, you know, to withstand the test of time in some bullshit that you know is not it, married or not, you know. And that's another thing. I'm a proponent. I feel like, I don't know if we talked about it back then, but I'm a proponent of divorce too. Just like I'm breakups. I ain't trying to be the breakup queen, but if this shit ain't working, we gotta go. After we exhaust, you know, all options that we can. But, you know, that notion back then of feeling like, you know, people would say, oh, I'm in love, I found someone, I want to get married. That's, nah. Now, love is definitely not enough. I need communication. I need understanding. I need good mental health. I need support. I need grace. I need self-awareness. I need a whole lot of things that go far beyond the love. And I think you definitely should as well. And so I think that another part of that is, you know, we'll say love. And I think that we tend to hold on to love when we feel like we don't have anything else. Because if you've got to a point in your relationship, and I say this a lot on my Instagram, that if you've gotten to a point in your relationship where you feel like the only thing you have left is love, it's probably time to go. Because many times we will stay in situations that we know the expiration date has come from because of history, because we don't want to start over, because we just don't want to deal with a whole bunch of random partners. And that's something we talked a lot about back then, you know, that we tend to get in this space where, you know, at one point we have all this freedom and we enjoy the fact of being able to be single and date around. But sometimes when you get into a situation, no matter how bad it is, you are really just like your focus is only on the one little piece that's good. And sometimes that one little piece may just be the love. But again, that's not enough. So we have to understand that it's in walking away, there is beauty that you will eventually get to where you see the value in it and you understand that you don't have to have a whole bunch of partners, but you may have to be single for a little while. Because once upon a time, some good friends told me that, you know, I was saying how I was dating and dealing with these numerous guys, and my friends were like, well, Shaanah, you know, you hanging out with them 4 different guys, you actually can get that same love that you're looking for. You know, that's not love. I just said love ain't enough. You can get all those things. So say, for example, I'm like, you know, I go to dinner with this one. This one's funny. This one's affectionate. This one's a good communicator. They were like, you know, you can actually like find like one person that will have like all those things combined in one. And I'm like, well, when y'all find that nigga, send him my way. But I got exactly what they were saying, in a sense that like sometimes we tend to just feel like it's exhausting. You know, love and dating and relationships can be exhausting at times. And if we feel like, again, that love is almost like this anchor that will hold us back from doing the things that we need to do to really get through to the happy and healthy relationship that we desire. So whether that's saying that we have history with this person and we don't want to leave, we don't want to deal with a lot of different people, we don't want to start over, we don't want to accept the fact that this relationship has ended, we don't want to accept the fact that possibly this person does not love us anymore, but yet and still here we are. So we have to be able to really just look at these situations and understand that, you know, love is not enough. But on the flip side of that, the variables that come with being with a person when you know that the love is gone is not enough either. And I think that's a very fair, you know, way to look at it. So the next thing that was kind of crazy that one of my guests talked about in regards to why people want a husband, and she more so went into the angle of like getting a husband. And her perspective was of the mindset like, get a man by any means possible. Like, even if you got to lie to the man, if you got to manipulate the man, if you got to do, she was like, you know, she had a new notion. This was back in 2019. And she really felt like every man that she got with, she was going to lie to him about what her experiences had been in life. And what she meant by that was like, you know, if a man was like, you know, have you ever been out of the country? And she was like, I'm going to be like, no, I've never been any further than the state lines of Tennessee. Like, I've never been to Mexico. I've never been to Paris. I've never been to a steakhouse. I've never been to this. And so it was like, why do you feel like, why would you do that? And her philosophy was that men would probably relate to it because them niggas stay lying too. And so I was like, well, my thought process even at the time and now was like, if you start out lying, at what point do you stop lying? And then at any point do you admit the truth? And so she felt like, you know, you admit the truth after you get married, because at that point, what he gonna do? He could leave you. These days men will leave. But she felt like he's going to stay if you wait to tell the truth after the fact. So I feel that's what I disagree with. You know, back then I was like, do what you got to do. Any means necessary. If you got to tell a man you ain't been no further than Murfreesboro, if you got to tell a man you ain't never been nowhere better than Red Lobster, if you got to tell a man that you don't even have a job, you know, do what you got to do. But I definitely disagree with that now. Don't be a liar. Don't be a manipulator. Don't have narcissistic traits. Don't be a gaslighter. Show up authentically as who you are. And if you are with someone that, if you tell them the truth about who you are, whether it's a trip or your traumatic childhood or your life's history, if it's something that's going to scare that person away or it's going to be a problem, you want it to be. So that's a good process of elimination. But if you're able to be honest and show up in these situations and the person is able to accept you and your circumstances for who you are, then that's a person that you probably want to keep around and see if they could potentially be a good partner. So I think that, you know, her philosophy it kind of went back to me of like the thought process of like all men are dogs. Do y'all believe that? Do y'all believe all men are dogs? That's a good question. I don't think that all men are dogs. I think, because the thing is, for me, I feel like if you're going to say that all men are dogs, if you're able to say that all men are dogs, that's the same as a man coming back and saying something like all women are hoes. And we know that's not true. Like, I never want to try to throw a label on or a title on anyone that I wouldn't want thrown back to me. It's kind of like, why I don't like to do things that I don't like done to me. But I don't feel like, I feel like people lie. People are liars. I feel like people are cheaters. I feel like people do negative things, but I'm not going to categorize a man that in depth, nor agree with that any longer, that if you have to lie to get the husband or, you know, manipulate to get the husband or to get the relationship, if that's what you need to do what you got to do. Nah, we're past that. We've grown up. What I say, I think at some age that we should grow up and start making different decisions and better decisions. And I think that's one of them. So that philosophy she had back then about, you know, lying to get a man, and, you know, I think it was a way of her expressing really just like trying to get a man to, you know, they always say like, I'm not going to say be helpless, but you'll hear people that talk about relationships like, let your man take the lead, make him feel like you need him, make him feel like you need his help. That's fair. Because you do want a man to do things and you want him to know that he is needed, but you ain't got a lot to do. You ain't got a lot to kick it. So I'm not a fan of that one at all. And then the other part of that is I feel like that mindset that we had back then and allowing that thought process was almost like thinking that relationships are a game. And you lose by thinking that relationships are a game. Like, if you think a relationship is a game, it's a game that you are going to lose every single time, because, you know, people are not to be played with. Their emotions are not to be played with. People's mental health is not to be played with. People in general are not to be played with. So you don't want to play a game of lying, because even if you feel like you have the mindset that all men are dogs or all men lie, that sounds like some work that you need to do to figure out where that is coming from. Like, has that been your experience and that's why you feel that way and you're stuck in that one area? Because I've definitely experienced liars in relationships, but I don't feel like all men operate in that same capacity. And then on the other hand, you know, I've experienced cheaters in relationships. I don't feel like all cheaters, all men operate in that same capacity. I've experienced a lot of things in my life that I know for certain are not one size fits all. So I'm not gonna ever try to put that on an entire sex and think that that's the way for us to find a husband. It's absolutely not. So again, I think that, you know, similar views and perspectives of wanting marriage and wanting to have marriage happen in a certain way with kids and things like that is still very fair. I'm okay with that. I don't subscribe to that 100%, but I do subscribe to the notion for me personally that I would want to have a partnership with the person that I choose to have a child with if I did choose to go down that road. And that's another conversation to make a video about. I've been putting thought to that. Not that I got a man around exactly, but I've been trying to think about, maybe because I'm just like this decisive person that sometimes feels like I need to put like a pin in things. So I'm really like thinking about it and praying about it. I got to talk to God more about it, but trying to figure out, you know, do I want to make a final decision and say like I don't want to have kids, or if I do, you know, y'all know I don't have any. But I think I have to decide that, because as I know the man that God is going to send to me, I need to be able to answer that question. And I need to be able to answer that question in a capacity enough that that someone else can't come along and change my mind. Because if I say that I'm positive 100% and I'm final in that decision of not wanting kids, and I meet somebody that does, I want to be able to say like, I don't care how appealing or great this person may be, I'm not going to do them that disservice of getting with them and then putting them in a position where now they're trying to like change my mind, because I wouldn't want the reverse done. That makes sense? Picking up what I'm putting down? So that said, going back to it, you know, views and perspectives, I don't feel like you break, you buy. If I get a situation where, you know, somebody done got me, I done slipped up, then that's just what it is. I'll deal with it. Love is not enough. I think back then that I felt like love might have been an overriding theme, like you could push through with love, but nah, y'all know love ain't never enough. That goes without saying. I think that wanting a husband over just wanting one person to provide all the things that you want in love and in your life over having 10 people to do them, it only makes sense. It only makes sense. You know, sometimes it's fun to have 10 niggas, but when my life's set up, yeah, I ain't even got time for that now. And then I think that the other part of it that I did not talk about, I want to touch on is, you know, we talked about in 2019 that marriage was like this, it felt like this really rare gem. Like everybody wasn't walking around getting married. Everybody didn't have the ring. So that's why it's like, oh, you know, I got a ring. I got I got the prize, you know, I got something that you want. And in reality, it was almost like it was a rarity that I did not realize. And I want to just read off some statistics to you guys. So these are some stats I pulled from a recent article. So it said the number of marriages in the U.S. Present day is around 1.6 million. The U.S. population is 331 million. So what percent is that? That's real small. So you see why it's like, yeah, it's a rarity. It says the marriage rate is 5.1 per 1,000 people, down from 6.1% per 1,000 people in 2019. In 2021, there were 61.45 million married couples in the United States. Again, 331 million people. We didn't even hit 100 million people being married. It said the marriage rate is the lowest today since the U.S. government began keeping records in 1867. This is crazy. Approximately 80% of households were married couples 70 years ago, compared to 49% of married couples today. Among unmarried adults, 58% say they wish to get married in the future, 27% are unsure if they want to, and 14% say they do not want to get married at all. So those stats are very telling. And when it comes down to saying I want a husband, it's a lot of people. It's not as many people, I'll say, that are saying, I guess I want a husband as I thought. So based on what I just read, those stats, those are very telling. If right now the marriage rate is the lowest today since the U.S. government began keeping records in 1867. I need to go find a dissertation, a think piece on why that is. But I think we know, and I'm not going to go down this hole. We know that people stayed married a lot longer back in the day because they really had to. It was almost like a means to survival, and we don't have to live that life anymore present day. So I'll say, if you want a husband, that's cool. I want a husband. Clay Thompson, Jesse Williams, make me join. I don't want. I want all that, but make sure you're just doing it for the right reasons, and we'll wrap with that. So signing off, yours truly, Shaanah Montana.